of you like to eat fruits, vegetables, or any agriculturally cultivated products? All of us? Okay. So now I'll ask how many of you, before we were in a breakout room or before you read my outline, had heard of George Washington Carver? George Washington Carver was an African-American agricultural scientist responsible for popularizing the usage of legumes as cover crops to increase nitrogen fixation and benefit the overall health of soil. Legumes, as defined by the USDA in article Legumes, published in January of 2020 on the 26th, are members of the bean family, such as those I have here like peanuts and beans. Because we all live in the heart of California, being one of the most agriculturally diverse and bountiful places on Earth, it seems ironic that we don't often credit the root of consistent agricultural success to the profound discoveries of George Washington Carver. And because we all eat that food, it is important that we understand how and why his research so drastically changed historical and modern agriculture. I hope that through an introduction to his life and discoveries, we can all understand Carver's contribution to sustained agricultural success, as well as understand what his research was and how it helps ensure agriculture continues to thrive. I plan to share his early life in slavery, his middle life being time spent at university, and finally his research and how it contributes to the field of ag. As is stated by Ron Wilson and Kay Ann Taylor in article, The Quest for Education, Racism, Paradox, and Interest, Convergence in the Life of George Washington Carver, published in March of 2020, the exact birth date of George Washington Carver is unknown, as he was born in 1865 in rural Missouri into slavery under Union loyalist Moses Carver. George Washington Carver was an unhealthy baby and very close to his birth was captured with his mother by pro-Confederates and taken to Arkansas. Moses Carver, intent on ensuring the best life for his slaves, paid for George and his mother to be returned to his property. However, when George was returned, his mother was not with him. The Carvers nursed George back to health and raised him as one of their own, going as far as to teach him how to read, write, and work in a garden, which author Jocelyn Benitez Alfonso of Current Biology magazine, published on January 10th of 2022, expects to be where he gained his affinity for plant-based sciences in the first place. George was exceptionally smart, and while the Carvers provided him a foundation, he soon exceeded their educational levels and needed to enroll in classes at a school, as is stated by Ellen Bailey of George Washington Carver, War Orphan, published on August 1st, 2017. However, because he was Black, the only school he could take classes at was located in Neosho, Missouri, which was about 10 miles away from the Carvers. After moving to Neosho at age 8 and completing high school at age 21, George was highly motivated to continue his education at college. After applying and being accepted to Highland College in Highland, Kansas, George Washington Carver attempted to enroll and complete his degree, as is stated by L.S. Glein, author of George Washington Carver, in his own words, published in April of 2018. However, once he arrived, they refused to allow him to enroll, not on the basis of academic ability or merit, but on the basis of race. This setback did not deter George, and as can be found in George Washington Carver, A Life, published in 2016 by author H.S. Chase, he went on to complete his bachelor's in agriculture and botany at State Agriculture College, and later completed his master's in agriculture at the same university, which is now known as Iowa State. After completing his bachelor's and master's, Carver taught botany classes at Iowa State. We can see in the article, Contributors to Adult Education, Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver, written by Laverne Guyrant, published in September of 1998, that George's time spent teaching provided invaluable, as it caught the attention of Tuskegee University's principal, Booker T. Washington. Booker later hired George to run the agriculture department at Tuskegee and allowed him a space to do agricultural-based research. After being asked to run the department, George was able to embark on his own projects, leading to his research on the importance of utilizing legumes as cover crops to allow nitrogen to build up in the soil and thus generate bountiful crops. The climax of his research at Tuskegee was advocating for the usage of legumes and crop rotation to replenish the nitrogen in soil after many seasons of growing cash crops, such as cotton, depleted it. Now, you may be wondering how legumes help benefit the health of the soil. According to the USDA article, Legumes, published on January 26th of 2020, members of the legume family form symbiotic relationship with bacteria in their roots. Symbiotic in this context is a mutualistic relationship, meaning both the plant and the bacteria gain a positive advantage from their collaboration. These relationships often involve the bacteria known as rhizobium. When these bacteria cross the threshold of the cell wall into the root, it causes the roots to form swollen nodules, as can be seen in this picture. The circles, those are the swollen nodules. This is where the bacteria will now live and absorb nutrients from the plant. In turn, by absorbing those nutrients, the bacteria convert atmospheric nitrogen so that it can be used by the plant. Now, you may be like, Chloe, you just told us all of this jargon. Why do we care if there's lots of nitrogen in the plant and in the soil? Well, parts of George Washington Carver's research found that high levels of nitrogen increase plant growth and allow for increased production of chlorophyll, which is important in the process of photosynthesis and help plants generate sugary enlarged ovaries, like we can see here. Can you guess? It's the pieces of the plant that we eat as fruit. By finding sustainable solutions to the depletion in soil nutrition that had been caused by years of growing cotton, says Yoselin Benitez Alfonso of Current Biology magazine, published in January 10th of 2022, Carver paved the way for substitutions of different crops and introduced the world to the importance and capabilities of legumes such as peanuts and peas. By running projects that prioritized high nitrogen yield in the soil before prioritizing high crop yield, Carver's research flipped the narrative. As is stated by the Science Historical Institute on their biographical page, published on October 16th of 2020, by placing more focus on the health of the soil, his research allowed for farmers to gain more bountiful crops from their soil for longer amounts of time. It is through an exploration of George Washington Carver's early education, college education, and research that we can see the influence he had on agriculture. By understanding George Washington Carver's background, we can also see how different events in his life led to his educational discoveries. I hope that the name George Washington Carver means something to you now, and you can see how his research allows us all to continue to enjoy our favorite foods for years to come. Thank you.